Welcome to the latest episode of the B Movie Club. I'm your host Kevin, and this week we're going to be doing the 1982 comedy classic Creepshow, starring Stephen King, Ed Harris, Ted Danson, Leslie Nielsen, Hal Holbrook, Adrienne Barbeau. The list goes on and on. It's a cavalcade of stars. For those of you just joining us for the first time, each week we'll pick a certain movie of the B-movie variety. I'll post it on the internet, and you can send me your comments, questions, and favorite scenes and favorite quotes. Just generally tell me what you thought about the movie. You can always reach me on our YouTube page, The B-Movie Club. You can also reach us on our Facebook page, The Original B-Movie Club. And you can reach us on Twitter at KD9575. Again, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, and don't forget to click the little thumbs up button on Facebook, and don't forget to tell a friend. So, 1982's Creepshow. Essentially, this movie is an anthology film based upon those old comic books from the 50s, those horror comic books. A few weeks ago we did Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight, which was also based upon those kind of things. Although this preceded that movie by 10 years. So there you go. There are 5 different stories, including a wraparound story. The original wraparound story deals with a mean father who throws away a kid's comic book, horror comic book, and the kid gets angry and has his revenge. There you go. Don't want to be too much of a spoiler for you there. Then you have the first story, which is Father's Day, which deals with it's Father's Day, and somebody was killed, an old family patron, kind of cantankerous old man was killed on his Father's Day so many years ago, and now he comes back from the grave for his revenge. I don't want to give it all away, but he gets it. Then there is The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill, where a meteor falls from the sky and essentially turns everything into, like, grass. It's very exciting stuff, I know. So there you go. One man has to deal with it, and he doesn't deal with it too well. So there you go. Then we've got Something to Tide You Over, where a man hunts down his adulterous wife and her lover and bury them in the sand on the beach and let the tide come in, and then they get their revenge upon him. There's a lot of revenge going on here. They get their revenge on him. Don't want to give it away, but yeah, they get their revenge. Seems like I'm giving everything away. I don't want to tell you everything that happens in this movie, but I want to give you a general flavor of what's going on here. Then there's the crate. They find an old abandoned crate at the local university in like the archaeology department. Open it up, and there's something in there that's hungry. So how do they deal with that? What happens to the people? And good times. So look out. Then, to wrap it up, they're creeping up on you. They're creeping up on you. This is one of the most vile things ever filmed on TV. A wealthy millionaire, also very cantankerous. A wealthy millionaire. I guess all millionaires are wealthy. Is that right? I guess it depends. He's kind of cantankerous. He lives up in his penthouse suite that's supposed to be absolutely 100% germ-free. Unfortunately, roaches keep getting in there. Roaches. There's a lot of roaches here. He doesn't like the roaches, and let me tell you, the roaches don't like him. And bad things happen. So there you go. Those are the stories. Typically, the way the movie was filmed, first of all, it was directed by George Romero, who we all may know as the original director of Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, those kind of movies. The godfather of zombie films as we know them today. Written by Stephen King, the master of modern horror, who wrote things like Carrie and Salem's Lot and Christine, things like that. Good stuff. Original screenplay by him. Anyway, it was, again, like I said earlier, meant to be an homage to those 1950s horror comics. So the movie is kind of shot that way. You know, there's a lot of use of color that keeps popping up when something happens. There's like kind of imaginary thought bubbles that'll appear and things like that to kind of give it that comic booky feel. People who are in this movie. Ed Harris, who you might know, he went on to be in The Rock and a million other things. He was Pollock in that movie. This is one of his first things. He was actually in a previous George Romero movie called Night Riders, about like a motorcycle gang that dresses up like they're knights from like around the Round Table kind of knights. There you go. Good times. He was in this. He was in Father's Day, which is kind of interesting. It's always kind of shocking because he is, you know, he's like this well-respected method actor who, you know, typically does very important roles. And here he is in Creepshow back in '82 with a little more hair. So found that kind of interesting. Leslie Nielsen, who at this point had done Airplane, but really hadn't established himself as being like Mr. Comedy, where everything he does is Naked Gun or any of those kind of crazy things. He was in Something to Tide You Over with Ted Danson, who was also relative unknown. He didn't do Cheers until a few years later. In Something to Tide You Over, at the risk of giving something away, at one point Ted Danson becomes like kind of a waterlogged zombie, kind of walking around. And he talked about how his daughter was on the set and he was a little concerned because he was all zombified. So he didn't want to scare her, so he was going to go up to her and say, hey, it's okay, it's your father, kind of thing. And as he walked up to her, she just kind of turned and looked to him and said, oh, hi, Dad. Totally unfazed. So he need to work on his acting a little bit at this point, I don't know. Apropos of nothing, when he is the waterlogged zombie, there are times where it looks like he's just laughing. So I don't know if that was part of his thing, or they caught something there, or somebody told a joke off camera. He was working with Leslie Nielsen. I don't know. But if you ever watch it, look at his facial expressions as a zombie. I don't know. Who else is in this? In the crate, it's Hal Holbrook and Adrienne Barbeau. Adrienne Barbeau, obviously, we know from Swamp Thing, The Fog, Escape from New York, a million other things. We would expect her to be in this movie, but Hal Holbrook is another well-respected actor. So, like, what is he doing in this thing? Stephen King plays Jordy Verrill in The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill, where it's interesting because he hadn't really acted before this. And yet there's an entire segment where he's really the only actor on stage. He was a little hammy and a little goofy, but he was fine for what it was. The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill was basically kind of a comedy. Anyway, it doesn't sound like a comedy, but it's kind of campy and funny, so it kind of worked. What's interesting, what I found out in my research, is the little boy who is in the wraparound story, whose dad takes his comic book away and throws it in the trash, and that was Stephen King's son, Joe King. And if you look at him, you can kind of tell, okay, I can kind of see that he looks like Stephen King. Not to mention the acting was very Stephen King level, if you catch my drift. He actually went on to become a horror novelist as well. So there you go. It's a family tradition. This movie went on to spawn a sequel about 5 years later, Creepshow 2. Yeah, very creatively named. It didn't do quite so well as Creepshow. Creepshow was actually a big hit, and actually the critics kind of gave it thumbs up as far as it being a horror film. I mean, they don't get too many accolades, but people thought it was pretty good for what it was. It was interesting. I was on IMDb, and if you look, there's like a tab you can click that talks about like parental advice or whatever it is. You click on it, and it breaks down all the things about this movie that might make it inappropriate for kids and how inappropriate it is. It actually says, as far as horror movies go, it's not that bad. It's you know, it's a lot of kind of hokey, comic booky horror and gore. I mean, it's not really that gory. There's blood in it, but it's not. I mean, compared to what you see in the movies today, it's pretty tame. The only thing that I'd warn people about, like I said earlier, was they're creeping up on you. I have a personal phobia to cockroaches. Like, I can't even step on them because they crunch like potato chips. If you have a similar reaction to cockroaches, I would watch They're Creeping Up on You with a wary eye, because there's a lot of cockroaches. A lot of cockroaches. So beware. Other than that, the rest of the movie, I mean, it's scary, but it's nothing that's going to give you nightmares, theoretically. So there you go. They actually made an unofficial third sequel, Creepshow 3, a few years ago, which has no relation to Stephen King or George Romero or any of the other things. And in fact, I believe it was straight to video, and no one claims it. They talked to Tom Savini, who was the makeup artist for this movie, as well as he'd done Friday the 13th, he'd done Dawn of the Dead. He's worked with George Romero many times, and actually is kind of an actor and a director as well. He talked about how the true sequel that they feel, the makers of the film, is actually Tales from the Dark Side of the movie. And the reason he says that is because back in the early 80s, after the success of Creepshow, TV executives were like, we need to create a weekly TV version of Creepshow. And through their machinations, that became the TV series Tales from the Dark Side, which, for my money, still has the creepiest opening of any TV show I've seen, where it's like, there is another world, just as real, though not so brightly lit. That is pretty creepy, even now. So that was based upon Creepshow. You know, weekly anthology kind of show, like a Twilight Zone kind of thing. So, in the early 90s or late 80s, when they made Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, that was, since its inspiration came from Creepshow, they kind of feel that was the last sequel, not Creepshow 3. So if you have the opportunity to see Tales from the Dark Side, it's got Christian Slater, Steve Buscemi. It's an all-star cast. What can I tell you? Debbie Harry's in it from Blondie. So what more do you need? Anyway, it got a 67%, I guess that's fresh, on Rotten Tomatoes, so you know it's good. It is still streaming instantly on Netflix, so go ahead and check it out. If you haven't seen it yet, please go to our Facebook page and send me any questions or comments or reactions to the movie, favorite scenes. When I was a kid, they actually made an actual comic book for Creepshow, the movie. It was like a direct adaptation, which was pretty rough for my like 6-year-old eyes. It was actually belonged to my sister Erin, and at one point I stole it from her, and she still was like, "Where's my comic book?" So there you go, good times. Anyway, so next week I posted on Facebook, you know, what movie should I do? And what we're going to do next week is The Omega Man, starring Charlton Heston, and it is streaming instantly on Netflix, so go ahead and check that out. I know I just did a little Charlton Heston a couple years ago, but the 70s are just full of crazy Charlton Heston movies, so you got to check it out. I'm not talking about the Ten Commandments or Ben-Hur. I'm talking about Planet of the Apes, and I'm talking about Omega Man. So check it out. Send me your questions and comments. Like I said, you can do it on Twitter. You can do it on our Facebook page, the Original B Movie Club. You can do it on our YouTube page, the B Movie Club. Let me know what you think, and I'll put it on the show. As you know, I end every episode with a totally out of context quote, and here it is. He said he wanted to measure the bite marks. I guess he got his chance. So there you go. Thank you for joining us. Again, next week we'll be doing the Omega Man. Send me your questions and comments. And be well.